Swetha, welcome to Let's Talk Quality, the podcast.
Thank you, Hamish. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolute pleasure. Pleasure to have you on. Could you give the listeners and the viewers a brief overview of you and what your role is at the moment?
Sure. I'm Swetha Krishnan, and I'm currently serving as the executive director, head of quality at Mural Oncology. Basically, Mural Oncology is a spin-off from Alkermes, and at our company, we are leveraging industry-leading protein engineering platform to reimagine cytokine-based immunotherapies for the treatment of cancer. It's really a great place to be at the moment. And in my role, I'm focused on leading quality assurance and compliance activities across all phases of the product lifecycle, from preclinical, clinical development, manufacturing, and distribution. And previous to this, I've worked in companies like Alkermes and Sanofi Genzyme. Previous to that, in Biogen and Pfizer. So I've always been working in the quality and validation space throughout my career. And I really am passionate about building high-performing teams and cultivating an inclusive, collaborative environment to thrive in. So just a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you for that. And let's take it back then. How did you initially get into the field of science, and how did your sort of early days evolve so that you ended up in quality assurance?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with science. I always liked to know how things worked. I was always curious as a child. And I think my love for both math and science, particularly biology, I loved human biology, and it naturally led me to bioengineering. I always felt that was tailor-made for me. And I remember in my master's degree, my thesis was trying to use optical polarimetry to find solutions for non-invasive methods of measuring glucose in the body, right? So we were trying to help diabetics. And I think that was really an amazing time for me. And I always feel science has been a way to unlock answers and drive meaningful change. So it's always fascinated me. I always feel that it's incredibly fulfilling to find solutions for patients, right? Where, you're impacting patient lives, you're solving real world challenges and unmet needs, really.
And did your upbringing play a part in you going into the science field, or was it something that you naturally just went into?
I think I would say both. There was a natural inclination for sure. But I think growing up, I was also raised by a single mother who always instilled a strong sense of responsibility and resilience in me. And I think early on, I've seen her manage finances and operations, and I learned early on, and it really enhanced my critical thinking and resourcefulness. I think in my home, education was a non-negotiable priority. And so that is a foundation that fueled my determination to pursue challenging opportunities in science, and including my move to the US to do my master's degree. I remember my mom, I don't know how we could even afford the tuition for my master's, but I remember coming here with my first year fees. And then luckily, my tuition got waived after good performance in the first semester. So I think it's just that, we've always lived a good life, but it's always taught us to be resourceful, to be resilient, and also to be determined to do the things that we feel are going to drive meaningful change.
Yeah. And what year, when did you come over to the US? And was it Boston that you originally came to or settled down in?
No, Ohio. Actually, it's
Right.
been a while. I'm not going to tell you exactly which year. It's been more than 20 years now that I've been in the US. Did my master's from University of Toledo in Ohio, and I pursued my master's in bioengineering. So it's been a while.
Yeah, nice. So then, how did you end up in quality assurance?
That's a great question. So when I graduated from my master's degree, honestly, I wasn't clear on what kind of jobs would excite me. The jobs that I was applying to were mainly technical jobs, mainly around equipment or design and, the technical aspects of bioengineering. And somehow that wasn't exciting me at the moment. And also, I was an immigrant, so I also needed work visa to work in the US. And at the time, it was really difficult to get a job that would sponsor your work visa. So I actually started my career in Pfizer as a contractor, and I was fortunate to get that opportunity early on. And I was in Connecticut at the time, and I joined as a technical writer and validation engineer. To be honest, this wasn't planned, but I knew for a fact that I wanted to do something related to improving people's lives, right? So I knew it working in a pharmaceutical or a biotech industry would be best suited for me. And I just wanted to give it a shot. At the time, I was desperate. I needed work. I said, I'm going to start here and see where it takes me. And actually, that was a great move for me because I wore so many hats. In the 2 years I was there, I was moved from role to role. I did tech writing. I supported their quality management system. They were standing up their quality management system or moving to Documentum at the time. So I supported that. I also was asked to do business analysis for a regulatory, they were putting together a structured content authoring system at the time. So I got to work on so many different aspects. I also got to be client facing and do support roles in those 2 years. So I got to wear so many hats in that first couple of years of my career. And I think that really it really helped me put my hand up and say, if I tried, I could do anything. And I think that's been a great start to my
Do you think?
career.
Yeah. Do you think that wearing so many hats and having different roles and variety in what you're doing helped you and does help you now in the role that you're doing, and if so, how?
I think, when you're pursuing your education, you really don't know as you transition to your career and start working, you really don't know what excites you. And I think early on, being exposed to different aspects of the job or different aspects of what you can do in a pharma company and getting exposed to those roles really help you understand what drives you, what motivates you, what is it that you like to do. And
Mm.
I really understood the importance of quality and validation and all of these roles in my first few years in my career. And that really helped me understand things from all perspectives, right? So if you're in a particular role, you also need to understand how other functions work around you. It's almost like understanding your stakeholders and their needs. And definitely having that exposure to multiple roles in my career has definitely helped me become a better individual contributor, professional, as well as a leader now. So I think definitely.
Yeah. What was it about quality that you feel that you thrived in? Why did you enjoy it so much?
I actually started my early career in validation, and actually, I was always fascinated. People think that, oh, validation is just testing, but that's seldom the case. As you are in that function, you really need to understand the process end to end. You really need to see how things flow and, where things could go wrong. And you really need to find those, breaking points and figure out better solutions. And so, in that, I felt like I got to learn a lot of different aspects of the business because I was validating systems and processes across all areas of the GXPs, across clinical, manufacturing, regulatory, distribution, and all of these different processes. So I got to learn a lot about how the whole product life cycle works through my role. And actually, as I was doing validation for a long time, I realized that I work a lot with quality. And I like to think from their perspective so that I will be the first line of defense. As soon as my work goes to quality, I always wanted to make sure that they give me a green light and say, "You've done a great job," and there's nothing for them to check really. And so I started liking that, and I think I already had that quality mindset. So I wanted to then switch over to quality to see their perspective and work through their lens. And yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated by how quality can actually drive strategy. right? We always think of quality as a support function. But honestly, if we are involved from the early stages, we can really drive strategy. We can really be fueling that. We always talk about speed, and quality and speed don't go hand in hand sometimes, but we can drive speed if we are involved early on. So I really like that aspect of quality where it's quality by design, and it's not something that we come, imagine quality coming in later in the game and saying, no, you did this wrong, or you didn't follow the process well, or you're not compliant. That doesn't serve anybody well. It's great when you can be part of the process and you can build that compliance and that quality aspects, throughout the process, so that at the end of it, you're always compliant and you're always ready for an inspection.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about just that aspect of quality driving speed and strategy and the importance of bringing it in early. If you can just delve into that or elaborate into that part of it.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. As we are working on an early phase product, right? We are looking at capabilities of CROs to help us with our phase 1 clinical trials. And in doing that, I've now been I'm directly involved in the request for proposal processes early on. And then I'm the one, looking at quality aspects and evaluating these CROs to see how they will contribute to our mission and our objectives, right? And I think that makes a huge difference, because imagine if I wasn't in the loop from the get-go and they already made a decision to bring in a CRO, and they don't have all of the quality elements required to meet our quality obligations. That won't serve us well. It would mean that in the process, we are going to cause some delays because we are going to see issues and we have to resolve those issues reactively versus proactively. So I think being involved early on helps you identify some of the risks and highlight these risks to our stakeholders, our business partners, and say, hey, this is something I'm seeing. We may want to resolve this or assume the risk. But at least in this case, you're made aware of the risk early on. You understand the risk you're going in with. And sometimes you're able to mitigate these risks before you sign the contract with these CROs. So I just feel involving us early on, and ensures quality and compliance by design, and you don't have to worry about solving issues. Obviously, there's always going to be issues that we have to problem solve. Nothing is perfect, but at least we have mitigated the risk enough before we sign on the dotted line.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the challenges that you would have faced in your early days in your career. I think a lot of people are shaped by their particularly the early challenges that they face in their career. Are there any that stands out? What were the challenges that you generally sort of came across in the early part of your career that you feel have shaped your career trajectory and success?
I think I've had a decently good career. I've nothing to complain about, but I remember my early days, and sometimes even now. I wouldn't say it's always perfect, but earlier in my career, I always felt like I had to prove myself. I come from a very competitive environment back in India. And so whether it's as an immigrant, whether it's as a woman in STEM, someone new in a new environment, I think you always felt the need to prove yourself. And I think initially, because of the way I was brought up, or the environment I was in, where I had to be the best in, we had to be best in class all the time. And I think that prevented me from asking for help. I always feel like I felt like I needed to know all the answers, and I shouldn't ask for help because I need to be an expert in this domain. And how can I? It's like lower than me to do that. And I think over the years it has helped me understand the importance of collaborating with people. And when I say collaboration, it just doesn't mean working with people. It also means there are people who are going to complement you in your skill set, in your capabilities, and having those right connections with people who are going to elevate you and your role and the things you can offer. So as quality rep, I don't know all of the technical details in process development or in regulatory or in other areas of the business. So I depend on my SMEs or my stakeholders to provide that information. I can definitely know enough to be dangerous and ask the right questions, but really I'm not the one who's all I don't need to have all the answers. And I think it's also helped me balance technical expertise with emotional intelligence and working with people. And I think for me, it's always about perseverance, right? And in this new role, I've learned to be adaptable, more and more adaptable, because I've always worked in big pharma and medium-sized pharma companies, but never in a small biotech. So this is my first role in a small biotech, and I always feel you constantly need to challenge the status quo, because just because something worked for you in a previous role in a previous company in that environment doesn't mean it's fit for purpose for the new company. And so you always have to challenge your thinking, and remove any biases you have and continue to evolve. I think I love that about me and my role. I get to continually evolve, even though these quality practices are pretty much the same. How you manage deviations, how you manage product complaints, how you manage your supplier quality management, like this is pretty much similar across the board, right? You ask any person in quality within any company, they're going to say similar things to you. There's still differences, there's still nuances that can be different in how you apply them in
Yeah.
different companies. So it's very
Yeah.
important to be flexible and
Yeah.
adaptable, really.
What is it about asking for help in your early career that you struggled with? I know you mentioned there the sort of maybe you feel like you can do everything yourself, and you feel like that element of pride, I suppose, in knowing what you're doing. But what is it that if people are struggling with asking for help, because that's I think as you get older and you evolve in your career, you naturally learn that you can't do everything yourself. But how did you overcome that challenge of not being comfortable asking for help?
Yeah, I think, it stems from the fact that you're insecure about something. And for me, the insecurity was that I wouldn't be considered credible in my role, or I won't be considered as an expert, and people may not come to me for answers, right? And it's one of those things that there, you don't have it's a good thought process, but it doesn't serve you well, really, because your credibility doesn't come from the fact that you have all the answers. Your credibility comes from consistency, being able to be accountable in your role. And those are some attributes I feel, like having that integrity in your role. I mean, there are some other attributes that really drive your credibility, not your expertise at all times. And I think it took me some time to realize that, especially as I started building my teams and I had teams of teams. I realized that, if I have this standard for myself, I'm going to expect similar standards for everybody in my team. And as I started working with more and more people, I realized that that's a bit unfair. My standards cannot be everybody else's standards, and I need to really listen and understand where people are coming from. So I also felt, as I took on more senior roles in the company and leadership roles, I realized that I will never be an expert in everything. Like, if you ask me today, I oversee quality across all GXPs. Am I a technical expert in all areas of the business? No, I'm not. Have I performed this role before across all areas of GXPs? I have not. But I guess I've realized through that is the challenge is about knowing enough to be dangerous, knowing enough to be able to ask the right questions, to be able to identify those risk areas proactively, but not knowing all the answers yourself. That's why I'm loving this role now, because I get to work with really amazing, brilliant people who actually just talking to them increases my knowledge base, because every day I learn something new from them. So asking for help is actually the best thing that's happened to me, because I don't call it help. It's almost like saying two people are collaborating and they're talking about ideas, and one person can fill in the gaps for you, right? So it's almost, for me, it's collaboration, it's working together, it's It's like working in a team. Like my daughters play soccer, so I always think about it. You need people in all of these different positions to play their part really well for your team to succeed and win the game. And it's similar, right? I don't have all the answers, I don't know everything, but if I don't ask for help and if I don't collaborate and work with other people, I'm not going to have a quality product at the end of the day. So I think I would encourage everybody to be okay asking for help. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my direct reports, and I was sharing the same thing with her. Is there's nothing wrong in asking for help. There's nothing wrong in saying, "I'm really tied up today. Can somebody else pick this up?" And it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not doing a good job. It doesn't reflect on your performance. I think sometimes that's another insecurity people have. Will this reflect on my performance? And I think people need to have that open conversation with their managers just to make sure that that doesn't drive their performance. Actually, they are being honest and they're communicating with you. That's the best part about it.
I think it's a sign of strength and security in yourself, to be able to have the confidence to ask yourself, because like you say, you're being vulnerable in that moment, and kudos to you by helping your direct reports understand that, because that's you being sharing your leadership, your wisdom that you've learned and your experiences, and by doing that you're developing your people further, and it's probably an experience and a bit of knowledge that they'll take and develop in future leaders themselves. So I think it's really important. You strike me as someone that has gone through a lot of self-development, and you've really taken that part of your role. You've obviously got the technical expertise that comes with it, but you've really worked on your leadership capabilities. You've really worked on developing yourself. You've been proactive. It sounds that doesn't naturally come to everyone. Like, would you say there was a moment where you started realizing these things, or did it just sort of evolve over time by making mistakes and learning on the job?
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, I didn't know the concept of mentors and sponsors, to be honest, because yes, I mean, I've had people I've learned from, but I've always thought about this, as to how did I start self-reflecting and how did I start this journey of developing myself in this leadership journey, for example. And for me, it most of this has started in my previous role in Alkermes. I will say that that's where I got to build a big team, and actually that's what drove me to think way beyond myself, because most of the times when you're an individual contributor, your focus is different. You're not worried about building teams, you're not worried about you know things that you need to think about as you have people under you. They're looking up to you for inspiration and motivation, and they need empowerment, and so you don't have to worry about these things. But as I went from an individual contributor to becoming a manager and then a leader and a team of leader of teams, I realized that I need to provide my teams an environment and a culture where they can thrive. And I love that about teams, because I feel like if I can make one meaningful difference in my team where they can thrive, they can work as a high performing team, that fulfilled me as a leader. So I think that's when I started self reflecting. And I had a wonderful, I still keep in touch with her. I had a wonderful boss there who actually, she saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, to be honest, as a leader. And she recognized that I was a people leader from the get go, which was also very encouraging. If you have someone in your life that will tell you not just the good things, but also give you constructive feedback, it helps you, it encourages you to be better. And I've always been the type of person who wants to constantly learn and grow and be a better version of myself. So that drove me. And actually, I was nominated for a 9-month leadership program in Alkermes, which was amazing. That program was called Lead, and it was with a company called Women Unlimited. That actually changed a lot of things for me. I actually got 2 external mentors from there, who I love. I still keep in touch with. They've really been amazing support, and they've brought some things to life which I wouldn't have been able to just reflect and think about myself. So it's great to have them. I also did my executive MBA from MIT recently. I just graduated back in May. And we did one course called Leadership Signature there by Deborah Ancona. And I love that course as well. And I think in that course, she asked us to reflect on our family ghosts. And that was really something I've never done before, as to what has happened in your life that really shapes you and how you show up as a leader every single day, and what are those triggers, how can you be better, how can you, because we all have our good days and bad days, and none of, I mean, I'm not perfect as a leader either, but I think the one thing that I do regularly is reflect. If I had a bad meeting, if I showed up poorly in a meeting, I would reflect and tell myself that wasn't good, and I would apologize and I would correct that mistake and repeat it, hopefully not repeat it again. So for me, it's always been, can I be better than I was before? And that's what drives me. And that's what drives me to develop myself every single day.
It's brilliant. Like I said, you've been so proactive about really putting yourself in positions where you can develop and you can accelerate your career. And just on those leadership courses that you've been on over the last few years, is that something that you proactively, the MIT class, you proactively went and did that?
Yeah, I mean, the leadership signature course was an elective, so
Yeah.
I took that up because I thought it's, even though I'd done a program before, I still feel every time I get an opportunity to talk about something like this, we spoke about imposter syndrome. There's so much that still goes on, as you grow in your career. Like, yes, I could say that I now know to some extent how to manage teams, but that doesn't make me the best leader in the industry, right? Like, there's always things to improve. And I'm, like I said, I'm not a perfect person. So I always think about what else can I do to improve the experience I'm offering to my teams, right? How can I, and now that I'm in a leadership role in Mural Oncology, it also gives me an opportunity to think beyond my team. What can I do to improve the culture, or how can I contribute to the culture of the company? And I think that is powerful, when you are in that position and you feel responsible to do the right thing. And I just love that part of it. I think, Himish, if I wasn't in quality and pharma, I would be in I would have learned psychology. I love the people aspect of things.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. You mentioned your previous boss there. What traits do you think that she saw in you that made her believe that you would be a great leader in the future?
I think that's a question for her. But I guess
I know you're modest.
No, I remember meeting with her one day. This was like probably my first year performance review or my second. I can't remember. Normally, I've never heard my previous managers say things like that to me, but she said to me, I think one day you'll be head of quality. And at the time I was an associate director of validation. I was like, what is she telling me? And I was surprised in that meeting, and I asked her, like, how do you think that is possible? And I think she saw that I was somebody, even without a title, or even without being like a senior director or an executive director at the time, I was able to think strategically. That is the time when I joined the company, and I was more situated in the Waltham site, and I was working across all sites in Ohio as well as in Athlone, Ireland. And I realized, I brought forth certain gaps that I had seen in how they were operating within quality. And it was really great because, normally I could also see that she was open, and she was open to ideas from somebody who was not in her leadership team at the time, and I felt that said something about her leadership. Is she really had a pulse on people. She really was open to feedback. She really was open to driving change and efficiencies where she thought. And those ideas could come from anywhere. And that was a great lesson for me at the time. And I think I would say my strengths are in being able to communicate and articulate my thoughts clearly. I've always had the backstory of why I'm saying what I'm saying, because the why is important, right? You could go in and say, this is not right, that is not correct, we are not compliant here, we could do this differently. But I think the why is important. Why will that help?
Yeah.
What is the business case here? How will that drive efficiency? How will that help the people that are involved? And I think those are important as you drive. So I think maybe she saw something in me. Hopefully, there's more to it. And actually, she's not just said that to me, she's given me opportunities. So I think that's something to speak about, how a leader should be walking the walk and talking the talk, they say, right? So she's always given me those opportunities. In fact, I was the only one in that AD role in the quality leadership team. She actually added me to the quality leadership team early on. She's given me exposure and she's given me visibility. And, I owe her a lot in my career, because I think you need somebody in your career as your mentor and sponsor who can really give you the opportunities. So I that's something I've learned from her.
Yeah. It's one thing talking about something and telling someone something that they want to hear, or showing reward and praising someone, but it's another thing actually exposing them and giving them the responsibility. And she's obviously a great role model and mentor for you. That's helped you in your career, so good for you. So let's talk about your current role now, and I want to talk about, I suppose, the leadership aspect of building a team in a sort of a startup in a clinical stage biotech where things are moving quickly, resources could be scarce and hard to come by. You might have challenges around headcount and budget, which I think a lot of, in this current climate, a lot of clinical stage biotechs and quality leaders will be facing. And then you've got to lead a team, and you've got to show up every day, and you've got to make sure you're getting the best out of your people. And it's often a case of, when times are hard and stressful, that can bring out the worst in leaders. How do you personally try and manage sort of stress, and how do you ensure that the best version of you is showing up on a daily basis?
Yeah, that is a challenge, I will say. In a small oncology biotech, you're always balancing between speed and quality, and I think we're also doing all of this with less number of resources. So everybody is always stretched thin. And I think the biggest challenge has been prioritization, which is easier said than done, because sometimes a lot of different aspects are high priority all at the same time. So how do you balance that, right? And I think the most we have been trying to do is, thinking about the bigger goals of the company and trying to prioritize based on what is it that is going to add the most value at this stage. What is it that we should be focused on so that we can serve the patients we aim to serve through this important medication, right? And so I think for me, it doesn't matter whether you're the leader or the head of function or whatever, you really need to be part of the team. You really need to understand what they're working on. You really need to be one of them. And I like that about my job right now, is because there are days when I forget that I need to be strategic, because I'm pretty much in the weeds with the team, trying to solve a problem, trying to uh, help them prioritize when they are overwhelmed sometimes, trying to, support them by just channeling the work. Because sometimes I feel like people struggle with that too, where they feel the need to, they feel accountable. And I think that's a
Yeah.
great strength people have. But at the same time, they put themselves under pressure. So, how do you help them not worry about certain things because they're not as important at this time? How do you prioritize for them? So I think for me, it's always been just be part of the team, be with them, help them, support them. And for me, I don't even remember sometimes that I'm the head of the function. I just am part of the team, and that's the best part of how I like to operate. Definitely also managing up well so that my team feels supported, they feel like they belong to the broader mission of the company. And at the end of the day, being vulnerable. I make mistakes, and sometimes I'll tell my team I screwed up. today. I didn't do this well, or and I think we all learned together, and that's actually made the team really close knit, because people are able to come to me and say, I really forgot to do this today, and it's okay. I think we all try to support each other, and it's okay to have open dialogue. It's okay to make mistakes, as long as we are learning from it as a team. So yeah, I mean, I would just say that it's not easy. We are all putting in a lot of hours, but I think what drives us is the passion we all have for the work, and
Yeah.
for what ultimately we are going to drive, right? We are driving change. We're bringing medications for unmet needs. And I think that, and we're going to help some patients, hopefully. So I think that having that mission driven purpose also
Yeah.
helps the team.
And you touched on managing upwards, which is also, I don't know how if you've found that sort of difficult over the years, or if you've improved, and but how would you balance that sort of aspect of quality and speed, and ensuring that you're managing up, your team, but also upwards in the best possible way?
Yeah, I think for me, managing up is basically you're building trust and alignment, right? You're trying to ensure that your senior management can trust in the capabilities of your team and your ability to drive results really in the best possible manner for the company. And I try my best to be very good with my communication, right? Providing them with clear and concise highlights and updates, and updating them on risks proactively, and providing solutions that would help mitigate those risks. So just keeping them aware of what is going on and what the needs are has always been helpful. And I think for me, what's been important is to really understand what matters to my stakeholders, right? Because ultimately we are a support function. I want to always make sure that I understand what matters most to my stakeholders, and then my communication is also catered around those priorities. How can I support in the best possible way to move the business forward? And I think
Yeah.
that's how I think about things. But yeah, proactive communication, keeping senior management informed, and getting their buy-in on certain important decisions you're trying to take, whether it's your org structure, whether it is budget, anything that you need, like making sure that you have their support and buy-in. That's very important.
That's awesome. Shweta, I've got some quick fire questions to finish off the discussion, which I think has been brilliant. My first question is around values. What are the three most important values that you personally live and die by?
I think integrity, doing what's right even when nobody's looking. Very important. I think for me, resilience, bouncing back from setbacks, being okay with mistakes, and but rising from it, and having a positive outlook all the time. I think the last thing would be empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes, assuming positive intent, and being there for people. I think we run so fast that I feel sometimes we need to pause and just be there for people and support them.
Awesome. Do you believe in leaving a legacy?
Absolutely. I hope I could make a difference. So for me, leaving a legacy means making like meaningful impact, whether it's through my work, whether it's the people I serve or touch their lives in some ways, or maybe setting examples for my daughters, because I have two girls. And I think for me it's about contributing to something larger than myself. Yeah. I would love for people to remember me by, yeah, she made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anyone personally or professionally that's been the biggest inspiration to you in your life?
My mother, hands down, my biggest inspiration. I think, when this might be a long-winded answer, but when my father passed away early on in our lives, she was a housewife. So how she turned from a housewife to building her career and supporting both me and my brother educating us, giving us the best life possible. I've seen it all. So I think for me, hands down, she's my biggest inspiration. But professionally, I think I've been inspired by many people. I think I like when I see qualities of leaders balancing vision with compassion. And I think, when you can be results oriented, but also be people centered, those are the people that really inspire me.
Awesome. Final question. Which one piece of advice would you give to aspiring quality leaders?
Yeah, I usually have the 4C model that I always drive towards is, you know, always challenge the status quo. Just because something worked for you before doesn't mean it'll always work. So it's okay. Challenge your biases. Stay curious. Never forget the why behind quality. I think that's very important. Collaborate with people, work with people. You can't work alone. So keep that in mind. And then the last thing I would say is be compassionate. You need kind people in the world, and the more compassion and empathy we can have for people around us, the better the environment and the culture we build, and the better outcomes we have.
Swetha, that's been a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been great getting to know you as well, personally, but I think your ability to be proactive throughout your career, show resilience in your early days, and achieve what you've achieved, and you're progressing is incredible. You're going to be, you already are an incredible quality leader, and I'm really excited just to see you continue to progress. I hope your mother's listening, because I think she'd be incredibly proud of you, and all that you've achieved. So thank you so much for coming on the show. If people wanted to reach out to you, is LinkedIn generally the best way?
Yes. I think it would be the only thing I would ask is if people can write me a small message when they're reaching out, because I get so many
Yeah.
messages. So yeah, I'll definitely try and respond through
Awesome.
LinkedIn.
Well, thank you again. Best of luck with everything that you continue to do at Mural, and yeah, looking forward to seeing all your success in the future.
Thank you, Hamish. This was really great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Glad you enjoyed it. Thanks, Swetha.
Take care.